6, and we want to look at what's making headlines in the dailies. Joining me to do that is Bernard Wakoli. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. And we'll dive straight into it. And as usual, we're going to start off with the Standard, where we have the headline, first of all, being teachers, lecturers, and doctors get pay rise. That should be good news for the teachers and lecturers, especially given the number of strikes that we have seen. But then again, of course, the question would be whether this pay rise meets the demands that they've been making.
Yeah, that's a very important question, Mike, because when you look at what has been happening in this country, we have had frequent strikes or civil unrest of teachers, lecturers, and doctors, including nurses, but I can't see nurses included here. So we don't know the sustainability of this increase and whether it's going to bring to an end what has been going on.
The perennial strikes that
The
have been going
perennial
on.
strikes,
Yes,
yeah.
and looking at just some of those figures, we have teachers with 16 billion allocated to TSC to hire more teachers, and award pay increase after job evaluation. Again, that would solve another big problem that we've had. Other than just pay, having more teachers distributed to at least deal with that crisis of not having enough teachers.
Mike, when you look at the teacher-student or teacher-pupil ratio in Kenya, I think Kenya is one of the countries that is really lagging behind. When you compare with the global statistics, we have a class of more than 50 or even 100 pupils being taught by one teacher. I think global is not acceptable, and if the government can hire more teachers and be able to sustain them, then it will improve the learning opportunities for many children.
For many of the children. And another figure that we could look at, and especially now that we have the teachers on strike, and that is 5.7 billion monies for university staff, potentially to end lecturers' strike. So hoping that would also bring that to an end. It's been...
Mike, we are just seeing figures, but we are not sure whether that figure includes what lecturers and the government agreed in their CBA. You know, lecturers have been talking about this CBA for quite a long time, and if that figure that we are seeing government is offering is part of that collective bargaining agreement, then it is a good thing. But if that figure is outside the collective agreement, and if that figure is not going to be sustained in the long run, then we're still going to experience some more strikes from lecturers. I think what we need in this country is to have a lasting solution to some of these crises when it comes to pay and pay evaluation and, and reviews.
Absolutely.
So that we don't have these frequent and perennial strikes.
All right. And finally, while we're still on that, the police or the disciplined forces are to receive 4 billion, and hopefully that will trickle down. Because the other issue that we have sometimes is that the pay rise normally goes to benefit the top part of some of the administrations and not the whole force.
But when we look at the issue of the police force, as much as we might want to have their pay increased, but we also need to look at their working environment, especially in terms of housing. Police or disciplined forces are living in very deplorable conditions. And if we can have more resources invested in their living conditions, it will also come to aid them in their service delivery. But it's good that we have government now thinking about increasing salaries and remunerations for most of the public servants, and we hope they will be able to deliver services and also reduce incidences of corruption, because we have always been told that the corruption among these officers is due to poor pay.
Poor pay, right.
So if the government can increase their pay, then there are also other packages, remunerations in terms of allowances, then we don't see them again complaining of not having enough resources to cater for their families, thus engaging in corruption.
Absolutely. Well, get yourself a copy of the Standard and see what is, basically teachers, lecturers, and doctors get a pay rise. Let's also look at a story that is on page 6, but it starts off from here, and that is to do with Matiba-Stokes fiery debate on cremation. Let me just go to that page 6 and see whether we can take a look at that. And Matiba farewell rekindles debate on cremation. So, of course, first of all, starting off with the two funeral services that were held for the late Matiba. And of course, we saw the top leadership of this country in attendance, of course, to honor a great Kenyan hero.
Yeah, the funerals I think were well attended, both the services at All Saints Cathedral and at Huya Stadium. And although most leaders avoided talking about the current issues or current politics, but we saw most of the leaders, especially those who were with Matiba during the multi-party democracy, actually talking about how Matiba sacrificed both his wealth and his life to ensure that Section 2A of the Constitution was amended to give birth to multi-party democracy in Kenya. And it was a very moving service to the extent that you could see people actually reminiscing on what the Kanu regime had done on them. And Matiba was seen as a hero. And when you connect that to now the debate on cremation, is something that is a new phenomenon in Kenyan context, because we have not had so many people going that direction. And Matiba being one of the political icon and, somebody who has had this loving for most Kenyans. People expected that they will maybe be buried, then, a mausoleum is created or constructed in his honor. Then, people maybe could be paying homage and learn about multi-party democracy in this country. But for him choosing the direction of being cremated, I think is something that is going to encourage most leaders.
Yeah, and it raises debate because traditionally that's not something we're used to.
Yeah.
And there's always the feeling that, one needs to go back to the soil where they came from, whether you're looking at it from a religious perspective or even from a traditional one. But I remember there is also, was it Bishop Manasseh Kuria, who also requested to be cremated. And that, of course, also caused a huge debate out there.
I don't know the origin of this. I've not done so much research on the origin of cremation, but I think it's something that reduces also burial costs in terms of burdening the families that are involved to now cater for meals of people coming and also those burial expenses. So if it can cut costs and reduce the burden of people having to go through so much debts, then it's something that people might consider in future.
Absolutely.
But as you have said, traditionally we have not had this kind of activity going on for taking place in Kenya because most Kenyans are Christians. Almost 80% of Kenyans are Christians, and biblically there are verses in the Bible that says you came from the soil and you go back to the soil.
To the dust you shall go back.
To the dust you shall go back.
And I guess it's just challenging tradition, because I remember one Martin Shikuku as well, who even went to the extent of digging his grave beforehand.
People do some of these preparations. Not only Martin Shikuku, we have had other cases where prominent leaders prepare for their burial because they think maybe the people they are leaving behind will not give them a befitting send-off. So they purchase their own coffin, they decorate and prepare their graveyard so that when they die, they don't give so much burden to the people to the family.
And nowadays you even have insurance that you can pay for a funeral. But I mean, that becomes a very touchy subject, especially for Africans, because it's taboo. And there are those who feel that when you talk about death, you might be calling it.
You might be calling it by your side. And from where I come from, we celebrate death. We celebrate when person dies, we celebrate his life. People don't really mourn to the extent of, having to feel so much about what has happened. But in that celebration, there's a lot of, feast. People eat a lot. So if majority of people are going to decide to go the cremation way, then it's going to, again, to deny those who have been used to those kind of feasts an opportunity to engage.
An opportunity to engage. Anyway, there you go. And of course, that's a debate that I'm sure many will continue with even after all is said and done. And the question is, would you prefer to be cremated or buried? But anyway, that is a personal decision. Let's go back to page 3. where there is, again, we come back to matters to do with our health. And later on, we're going to be looking at devolved health and whether it has worked. In fact, the question that we're asking today is in light of devolved health, whether you think it has worked or not. We're going to be having a minister from Peru who basically has experience on devolved health and devolution, but that will be coming up later on. And just for that question, do you think devolved healthcare is a success? Do you think devolved healthcare is a success so far? Do let us know what your thoughts are. I'll be reading through your comments as we carry on, and that will be hashtag Morning Express KTN, or you can tweet, and that's at KTN News or at Michael G. Gitonga. But now, focusing on medical malpractice sometimes, and what's interesting about this particular page, there's two stories which are almost opposite to each other.
Yeah.
You have one here, a boy suing hospital over an amputation, and medics are appalled by a plaster cast on his fractured hand too tightly, making it decompose. So, of course, that is gross.
There are two cases here of positive
And a
news
negative.
and negative. But from the negative side, I think this is just some sort of negligence on the part of our healthcare professionals or doctors, because you can't do something like this to the extent that we are being told that the boy's hand started composing, as in there are practices, medical practices in any profession. There are practices and guidelines on how certain things should be performed. And I think if nurses or doctors who are attending to this young man or this boy followed the correct procedure and ensured that there are standards that need to be put in place, then we will not have reached to this level. But it's very unfortunate case that we see a young man losing his arm just because of negligence. I call it negligence because no sane doctor can
would do that on purpose. Yeah, but the other positive story on this side is that doctors attach man's cut of foot. And this reminds me of also a surgery that took place in Kenyatta National Hospital, where there was a young man who actually had his arm severed off, his wrist, or from his wrist downwards. Yes, and they reattached it successfully. So, two, opposite stories.
This is another success story in the medical profession. And we think these are some of the things that we need to applaud our doctors. When they perform, they do things successfully. When they perform their duties as expected, then we applaud them. But when they do wrong, they should also accept mistakes and go back to the drawing board.
And whatever consequences also that come with those mistakes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's now look at matters politics, and we'll go to page 10 here of the Standard. And this is to do with the deputy president. Now, I don't know if as a political analyst, you saw this coming. We do remember the devolution conference, a speech that was delivered by the opposition leader, Raila Odinga, or let me say Orange Democratic Movement leader, Raila Odinga, and his proposal of having a three-tier government. But we had the deputy president also attend the same conference and give a speech. And Ruto rejects proposal to alter constitution. Did you see this coming?
Yeah, I saw it coming because you don't expect Deputy President Ruto to support everything that comes from the former Prime Minister, because politically speaking, these are competing forces, and you don't expect one to support one another. But again, looking at the speech by the Honorable former Prime Minister, you realize that he was talking as a government.
Right.
And in fact, during after the speech, he went on Meet the People tour within Kakamega town. And what he was saying is that if they have agreed with the president on constitutional reform, and nobody should nobody should stand in the way, or nobody should object their agreement. But listening to Uhuru yesterday on the same constitutional issue, I think the president is not so much keen to have constitutional reform at this moment. And when you look at his proposals about
three-tier government?
three-tier government, you realize that this is something that will be overburdening the already overstretched taxpayers, because we shall have people that will be paid salary at the time when we are talking about reducing the burden
Right.
of most Kenyans. So my suggestion will be, if you want to go the Majimbo system, the 14 regions or 14 blocks, then we do away with the counties so that those 14 blocks remain like counties at the moment. Then we have the constituencies that will feed into those blocks. But having another layer there, then
another
we
layer.
have counties, then you
And
know
of course, the
you
other
are
question-
creating very big big man syndrome, because when you look at the acts and behavior of our governors now, they behave as if they are the kings, they are the presidents within those counties. Now give them another layer where they feel they are controlling a larger area and resources. Then most
And of
Kenyans
course, the
will
other
not
question
breathe.
then would also
Yeah.
be to the wage bill. How do we afford that other tier of government? Because obviously, we expect that they're going to be properly compensated and paid.
Yeah, they will be paid, and they come with very heavy packs.
Oh, yes.
I think in this case, I will support what the deputy president is talking about, because if President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila have agreed to build the bridges, let us see the fruits of the constitution that that we made, because we are told that almost 90% of the constitution is good. Have we seen that 90% working?
Have we implemented it
Then
at
you
least so
realize
that we
that
begin to-
okay, the former prime minister wants the constitution changed, but it seems he doesn't know what he wants changed. He's trying to gamble with the with the issues.
Yeah,
I would rather he picks one agenda, he picks one item, then run away with
Thrash
it.
that out when we're done, move on to the next
But
one.
what we are seeing him is on this, is on changing governance system, is on so many things. So that again confuses the
All right.
electorate.
Okay, and I guess now that we're on that, let's finish off with page 14, which is the cartoon's view of how the third tier government would work. And well, according to the cartoon, okay, if I can get this going, this is how it works. According to the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, three-tier government, and he's the driver. So this, I guess, would be playing into
and somebody like the deputy president who has his eyes on 2022 presidential ticket. I don't think he will be supporting that kind of discussions where the prime minister will be seen as the mover of the agenda. You know, I think we are going to see this kind of engagement and confrontation between Ruto and prime minister, because Ruto, as we speak, is the front runner in the 2022 election. Is the man to watch, and is looking at any possible competitor. And a possible competitor here is a former prime minister, because when you look at the sentiments and excitement from his supporters, especially those people in ODM, you realize that they have very much expectation that at the end, President Uhuru Kenyatta is going to support Raila. And that's where you see now debates of dynasty, debates of hustler, debates, those kind of things coming in. But to me, they don't make any big difference.
All right, and on the Nation now, maybe let me just go back to the front page of the Nation. And we start off with the headlines. And Uhuru defends Raila deal in day of intrigues. Again, this was an interesting, turn of, not really turn of events, but I guess it is consistent with their handshake for the two of them to be on one side and, speak one voice.
Once they agreed and shook hands before cameras and before all the Kenyans and the world, it will defeat any person to look at it in such a way that you see maybe Raila trying to oppose what they agreed or Uhuru trying to oppose. So they need to come together and defend it jealously. But again, it's very unfortunate that we are leaving the destiny of this country into the hands of two people. Assuming this handshake does not work, what is going to happen? Because we are told that it's meant to build bridges, to bring peace. So if it fails to work, then there will be no peace in this country. So as Kenyans, we need to start interrogating ourselves to the extent that is our destiny or our peace and unity dependent on two people or three people or senior government officials. That if these people do not talk, then Kenyans do not talk. So I think that's the debate.
It's a conversation I think that we must have as Kenya. And well, according to the opposition leader Raila Odinga, he says the president reached out to me after the controversial elections and we decided to unite the country. This was not about 2022. Of course, there are those who feel or are alluding to the fact that it could have been a plan for 2022.
They might talk about this having no implications in 2022 elections. But we are living in a political world, and any move by a politician is political. And a political system takes a cycle, electoral cycle, which has just started. In fact, electoral cycle starts immediately you cast your ballot. Another cycle starts. So telling us that it's not about 2022 is actually running away from the reality. And you can see the kind of debates that are going on, whether, change of the constitution, electoral reforms, and all those things. And you remember in Kakamega, the former prime minister talked about going out to hunt as a father, then leaving children. Then, he's saying that he was not entitled to tell children why he was going to hunt. So he has brought something. He has brought the kill. But, the children are not seeing that kill. At this moment, we could be seeing some, ripple, some dropping
effects of the
handshake. But what we are subjected to at the moment is about, protecting the handshake. So to me, it might have been just between the two of them, looking at Uhuru's legacy of uniting Kenya, and also Raila scheming to rebrand himself for 2022. So the discussion of 2022 cannot evade this handshake.
All right, and well, still on the front page of The Nation, an interesting read for you, and one that is matters security, and this is to do with gun gangs on two wheels. These are boda boda riders. Let me not call them boda boda riders. Let's call them boda boda criminals. And these are criminals who are using bodas to basically attack people. And of course, it's become a crime that is widespread. According to this article, it's not just in Nairobi, Mombasa, or the main cities. It is literally the whole country.
Yeah, it happens everywhere, Mike, because motorbikes have provided a quick way of escape. So people can commit crime, still then jump, run away very fast with the motorbike. And, motorbike will have, of course, evade traffic and move in any direction. So it's easier for criminals to use motorbikes. But I think if the security agencies should come in and try to look at possibilities of controlling this kind of crime, because if it escalates, then it's going to affect most Kenyans. And more young people are going to be engaged in these criminal acts because, as we read, then is encouraging that, okay, we can commit crime on motorbikes without, recognition or without being arrested. And if the government can put in place structures and measures to ensure that boda riders are identified, like somebody's identified with the motorbike that is riding, then can provide some form of assurance.
I guess it's also regulating, the boda riders and seeing how.
And there are so many nowadays. Everywhere is just motorbikes, and I think it's a high time the government should come in and try to come up with the structures to curb the boda menace.
All right, and this we've already talked about. Our deal is not about 2022, according to Raila. And of course, Uhuru came out to defend that. But let's look at page 6 of The Nation. And DP tells governors to clear huge debts. And this, again, is to do with the devolution conference. And he challenged the county chiefs to live within their means and lead debt-free counties. And, well, it would be nice to have that start from the top also coming down.
Yeah, I think it should start from the top. But something that we should remind ourselves is that most county governments spend a lot of money on wage bills, on and recurrent expenses at the expense of development initiatives. So you realize that 70% of the general revenue for the counties are going for salaries and operational things, flowers for the governor, and tea, those kind of things. If we can have governors prioritize development initiatives like construction of roads, health is currently health services are devolved. If we can have governors invest more in the health and infrastructure, then it will going to improve the service delivery for most of these county governments. But what we are saying at the moment is that we spend a lot of money on salaries, but governors have also been complaining that they inherited a lot of workforce from the previous county council, county governments. And if these employees, because we have read in some quarters that most of them are ghost workers. We have some counties that have recorded over 30, 50% of employees who are ghosts. They are just on payroll, but they are not there. Others have even died. So if we can have an audit of how many people are working in those county governments and put on the proper structures of payment, then we can have a redo and restructuring
of how things are run.
Pay, yeah.
All right, and let's look at a topic that has gone quiet. Right, this is on page 6. And that's to do with Mbattle Chebukati hires top lawyers. And the IEBC chief denies claims that he has retained Kip Korir to negotiate a 700 million exit package. So IEBC again coming on the spot here with Chebukati hiring a top lawyer. But of course, there are those who say that he is probably hanging on to ensure that he has a package, and that would be a handsome package. 700 million is not
it's not. But this is actually costly to taxpayers and Kenyans. Although we also say that democracy is expensive, but we can't have a system where we have officers coming in the office before the end of their term. We are evicting them, then give them send-off packages. This is a huge amount, and if this is 700 million, it's going to Chebukati and the 3 commissioners. I know the 3 others who resigned might also claim some packages, and it's very, very unfortunate that at this time we are still, having no trust in our electoral bodies. I think one of the things that should come in as a product of the handshake is focusing on the electoral system to ensure that we have an electoral system that is endearing itself to Kenyans, that builds trust among Kenyans, that whatever they do is not going to be questioned by Kenyans. And by doing so, then we will not have this high turnover of commissioners coming in. And I think we can also think about reducing the number of commissioners and have a bipartisan kind of arrangement where political players participate in the recruitment of the commissioners. But having said that, it's also the role of the Electoral Commission to ensure that the civic education, people are aware about the electoral processes and the electoral cycle. As one day I said here that the largest number of people who will be voting in 2022 are now in high school. What processes are there by IBC to ensure that they reach those people and educate them, so that by the time they come out, they are not vulnerable to lies and propaganda by politicians. They understand the electoral system. They understand the processes, so that they go to the electoral political activities as informed citizens. So that's one area that electoral commissioners should now start looking at and ensure that we have people who are informed.
Who can take care of that.
Yeah.
All right, Bernard Wakoli, we'll have to wind it up right there. Thank you for joining us this morning to review the papers. And that's where we wind up our newspaper review right here on Morning Express. At this point in time, we'd like to release our KTN Home viewers for Life and Style to begin. Those of us on KTN News, we've got some interesting topics lined up for you. Later on in the show, we're going to be looking at healthcare, devolved healthcare, and how it can work. We'll be getting experience from parents Peru. And also, have you heard of the film called Rafiki? We'll be speaking to the director. This is a film that has been nominated for one of the best and top awards in the world. Made by Kenyans, acted by Kenyans. That's all lined up for you right here on Morning Express. So KTN home viewers, we say goodbye. For KTN News, we take that break. We'll be right back with more stories making headlines and some of those topics that I've given you.